We're getting started a little late because we had some amendments delivered right at game time. So I think they've all been distributed now. So if the clerk will go ahead and, if we'll go ahead and Representative Jackson's open up in prayer and then clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for not being upset. Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you for allowing us to assemble in this house once again, that you watched over us and kept us, protected us, opened our eyes to a beautiful day, and we enclosed in our right minds, the portion of our health and strength, the activities of our limbs, and the movement of our bodies, and we come to say thank you for your grace and your mercy. But you said the hearts of men are deceitful and desperately wicked, and we ask that you just touch the hearts, because you know the hearts. You know our hearts, and you know our thoughts before we even think them. Bless and keep us. Continue to look upon our leadership of this state and nation, our men and women in uniform, serving home and abroad. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Teresa. That's going to bring us to our first bill, House Bill 289, Representative Devine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To this august body of members, I stand before you today to present to you a piece of legislation. I've been working, myself and the chairman, for a period of roughly about 2 years to come up with a common sense approach with regards to dealing with the release of body cam information or recordings. I want to begin my comments, and I shall be brief, with just taking this opportunity to thank the chairman, but not only the chairman for his unwavering support to try to at least begin a process of moving this legislation. Also to our Attorney General Steve Marshall, and his office has worked with me on this. Barry Matson, the DA's Association, the Chiefs Association. Barry assisted also me in reaching out to the Sheriff's Association. Why am I mentioning these individuals? And I think as late as this morning, Representative Treadaway was on the phone to just give some clarity to the Fraternal Order of Police, and it's my understanding that they have the clarity that they needed on one or two issues, and they are in support of this legislation. I'm mentioning this because I want everyone here to know how we got here, and also to make sure that everyone understands that we do not take lightly our law enforcement agencies. We respect their opinion, and most importantly, we respect the rule of law. And with that being said, the legislation that we have been working on, Representative Treadaway, Chairman Treadaway and I, is a bill that is enacted, HB 289, which provides for the circumstances and procedures to disclose or release recordings made by body-worn cameras and dash cameras used by law enforcement agencies. It also further provides that the following may request. So we identify those individuals who may request the information: a personal representative of an adult who has been or is subject to the recording and who gives consent, a personal representative of a minor who is the subject of the recording, a personal representative of an adult under guardianship who is the subject of the recording, a personal representative of an adult who is incapacitated who is the subject of a recording, and the personal representative of a deceased individual who is the subject, and the key word is the subject of the recording. The requesters may make in writing a request to the law enforcement agency specifying the date, the appropriate time of the activity captured in the recording, or otherwise identifies the activity. This is, again, a common sense approach to what we have seen throughout this country these last few years. Why is it needed now? We may not be that state right now, but we could possibly be that state where something so catastrophic happens. So we want to make sure we protect those lives. We want to make sure that the family members have at least the bare bones information as to whom may have been the assailant, but also to make sure we also protect our businesses in the event that something may occur, because sometimes just being able to release a little bit of information, just as we saw in the city of Memphis just a few months ago, those families worked through a process that was similar to this. This is also moving around other states, many other states throughout the union, just as a safeguard to public safety. So the requester, again, must make this in writing. The law enforcement agency shall provide the following requests are as follows. They may disclose the relevant portion of the recording, or they may notify the requester of the decision not to disclose the recording, because of doing so may negatively affect an ongoing active law enforcement investigation. Why did we amend this? I'm a lawyer. I understand Rule 26. I understand the rules of all discovery. But there are instances where we want to preserve it. We want to make sure that the trier of fact, as well as through the voir dire process, that there's not enough, or there's not information that would go out that would taint the mind of the potential juror, or to cause a juror to decide not to participate in the judicial process or those proceedings. Also, and I'll close with this, the law enforcement agency may only disclose the relevant portions of the recordings. The individuals receiving the recordings may not record or copy the recordings. Again, I want to thank the chairman. And also, with that being said, I do also have amendments. These amendments, the first one that I received did come from our Attorney General's office. Again, I want to thank Attorney General Steve Marshall for his input, as well as his chief legal counsel, and Cameron, I can't remember Cameron's last name over there, who helped to put these amendments together. Bringing the clarity just to make sure, and if you would follow along with me, the amendment. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
So you've explained the bill. What we're going to do, if it's okay with the committee, we'll get into the amendments, because I think it's going to clarify some issues or concerns you may have. So if you will explain, I guess we'll start with the Attorney General's office amendments.
Correct.
And then we'll ask if there's any questions after that from any members of the committee. And then we'll move into, I believe you have some amendments from the district attorney's office.
I do, thank you.
Okay. So if you go ahead and explain your amendments from the Attorney General's office.
The amendments that came over from the Attorney General's office, and they are as follows. Replace line 70 through 71 on page 3 with the following. Enforcement agency shall be disclosed to an individual or personal representative only as provided by this act. This act does not apply to the exchange of recordings between law enforcement or prosecuting agencies. An individual requesting disclosure of the recording, must, and then of course we move to the next amendment on line 14, page 4, line 105, page 4. Upon the receipt of the written request, we will replace, lines 113 to 114 on page 5. And this, of course, deals with the recordings of disclosures would affect an ongoing active law enforcement investigation. Again, making sure that we hold close to our chest that information that should not be disclosed, in an effort to make sure that we do not taint a potential juror or jury pool. And then that appears to be all of the amendments that the Attorney General sent over.
Okay. Any questions by any of the members of the committee at this point, or you want to wait till we get all the amendments on? All right, we'll go ahead and do this one. Representative Jackson, do you have anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say this is about as much clarity as we're going to get, and I move to adopt the amendment.
Okay. So we have a motion to adopt the amendment by Representative Jackson. All in favor of the amendment indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so that amendment has been adopted. Now the bill's before us as amended, and I think you have, we'll move on to the DA's
This is the amendment that came over from the DA's Association, and as well as the one that he did speak, just to get clarity to address some of the issues or issue with the Sheriff's Association. And that is to replace on line 49 through 50 on page 2, and it should read, voice is subject to, is the subject of the recording. And all of these will almost read the same. And let me just explain what each one of these do. You may be at a football game, a widely sponsored event. So we want to make sure the person that's requesting it is the person that is the subject of the event, instead of everybody just being able to come in. Again, just adding that extra safeguard to make sure that we are addressing the concerns of the representatives, as well as making sure that it impacts those that are subject to the arrest. And so this amendment would do just that. Again, the voice is subject to the recording if an individual whose image or voice is the subject of the recording is deceased. The term also means, and then we drop down to line 85, page 4, with the same, and individuals whose image is the voice and the subject of the recording. Then we move down to page 88, same thing, whose image or voice is the subject of the recording. Line 91, page 4, the following voice is the subject of the recording. Line 93 and page 4 with the following, under lawful guardianship, whose image and voice is the subject of the recording. Of course, then we move on to line 97, page 4, with the following, disclosure or voice is the subject of the recording. And then on then we'll replace line 99 on page 4 with the following, whose image or voice is the subject of the recording.
Okay, so the amendment is before us. Are any questions on the amendments from the DA's office from any members of the committee? Okay, not seeing any. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the amendments. A motion to adopt the amendments by Jackson. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so the bill is now before us as amended. I don't believe you have any more amendments, do you?
No, sir. I don't.
Okay, so the bill is now before us as amended. Is there any questions from any members of the committee? Representative Gray? At the proper time? Okay, so we got that. All right, no, Representative Fiddler and then Representative Morris.
Okay, so to obtain the body cam, I guess they'll be, kind of walk me through, like how you would ask for to get the body cam images, who would actually be pulling that? Does the law enforcement agency get paid back for pulling all that in the time that it
Yes,
takes for
there's
it?
a reasonable, there are reasonable fees that are included in the bill.
And then if the recording has images of children or other victims or other people that are in that, how do those folks get?
There will be a deduction, and that's another reason why we added that language that is specific to the subject matter. Also, if the requesting party, and that's a great question, is whoever the requesting party is, they will have to pay for that portion. And that was one of the things the DA's office wanted to make sure, that they would have to pay for that portion of the shading, or as you know how sometimes when you see on TV, that would be an expense. Of course, they would have to pay if it should ever get to that particular matter. But anything with children, there is a deduction of those images and faces. But let me help you out with, or explain to you how this will work. For instance, and hopefully nothing will happen to you or I, but should something happen to me, my representative has under this law, upon it being enacted, would be able to request of law enforcement. Has to be in writing. Law enforcement then will do their due diligence based upon the facts of the case, the circumstances that may surround it. Then they would be responsible for making sure, and I feel confident with the law enforcement that we have in the state, our district attorneys, the various prosecutors, the Attorney General's office, they deal with this all the time. They would be able to determine, and just as the bill states, they have a right to reject it. So they don't have to necessarily do it And you don't want to pass. I don't want to pass a law that says you just have to turn over evidence like that. I know how damning that can be, whether I've represented defendants or not. But they would be able to exercise all due diligence and make that determination. Typically, in most instances we've seen, most family members want to simply know who did the killing, who the assailant was, what happened. And so basically sometimes they're asking for full disclosure of the video. If it is a video, sometimes it's the name. And so they would be able to make that request, but it would be any fees that would be associated with it would be on the requesting party.
So the fees, the time it took to go through the hours of video, because I imagine some of this could be hours of video, but no, maybe not.
And I think, well, once what happens is law enforcement will typically do their investigation. So once they've done their investigation, they've already captured that, because that's a part of the investigatory process. And so as a part of them doing, again, their due diligence, they would already have compiled that information.
All right, thank you.
Representative Morris, then Representative Jackson, and then Wadsworth.
I just want to say thank you for bringing the bill. You have really explained it all the way down to the last drop. Just thank you. And at the appropriate time, I give us, I second.
Okay. Representative Jackson, then Representative Wadsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to commend the lady as well, because this is giving transparency to law enforcement as well as to the community, the public. Now, she mentioned Memphis, the incident that happened there. And that was probably the quickest turnaround for video to be shown. Now, it was within the 14-day period, or some months passed before some people get a chance to see it. But I just want to thank you and thank the chairman and attorney general and all the agencies that are working with you to make this come into fruition. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I just wanted to add, I mentioned the Memphis, but what happened, they actually, even before the release of the details of the video, they had already tempered a lot of the tensions, because the public knew that the family representatives had already been working with law enforcement to try to get some answers and resolution. So again, it has an effect to bring about public safety, tempering those concerns, and then, hopefully we don't have to get there. I pray every day that we don't, but it's just one of those things.
Representative Wadsworth.
That would have to be subject to, however, again, once they make a determination as to what evidence it is and the way that evidence needs to flow, they would have that in their discretion to make that determination. And I think it would be best to do it that way, because.
Okay. And I know you came to me with this, actually it was more than a couple years ago. I think it was a few years now, and I know you worked very hard on it, and it's been a give and take. It's not always been easy, but I do appreciate you working with all the various law enforcement agencies to get to this point, and I know you worked very hard on it. So with that, I have a motion for favorable report by Representative Gray. All indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Favor, and all opposed by no. Your bill has a favorable report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. Thank you, Ron.
All right, that brings us to our next bill, and that is Representative Baker, House Bill 352, and I believe you have an amendment too?
Actually, I have 3 amendments.
3 amendments, okay. Explain your bill, and then we'll get into amendments, and we'll do questions after that.
Very good. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Alabama is one of only 3 states without any amusement ride safety legislation or regulation. This bill would provide requirements pertaining to the operation and maintenance of amusement rides and water slides relating to these 3 things. That would be inspections, liability insurance, and then also the operator, the patron, the rider conduct. This bill is something that would be self-policing, so it's not as if there's not necessarily with this punitive actions that are part of this, the requirements, and trying to provide for better safety regarding the amusement industry. With that, then I'll be glad to go into more greater detail on the bill itself.
Hold on just a second. You had how many amendments?
There's three.
So we got three here. This is just explaining, okay.
Would you like for me to go ahead into the amendments at this
Let's
time,
do,
Mr. Chair?
you've got a sheet here to explain it, but it has amendments on the top
Right.
that's not on the handouts. But go ahead and, which one are you starting with? Let's just. start
I'll
with
be
the
glad
first one.
to start with any that you desire. If you
All
want
right,
me
go
to.
ahead and start with, well, they're not numbered, but
Right.
the one on line 128, start with that, replace line 128.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This would be replacing lines 128 through 129 on page 5. Page 5, replacing 128 and 129. This would be with the following: exclusive of interest and cost of not less than $1 million or $1 million for bodily injury or death of one. So this would put this bill would put this in line with surrounding states in regards to what they have for liability insurance for amusement
My
rides.
understanding that's agreed upon.
That is agreed upon. This is
Okay.
a friendly amendment. That is correct.
All right, now let's go to, I'm sorry, any questions on this amendment? Any members? Representative Jackson.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask if he would, it's a 128, you're changing from 500,000 to $1 million.
That is correct.
That's, I just want you to make that very clear.
That
That's
is
what you're
correct.
doing. Thank you.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go ahead and take each amendment up. If there's no other questions, I entertain a motion to adopt the amendment. Motion by Jackson. All in favor of adopting the amendment, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so that amendment's been adopted. Now the bill's before us is adopted. We're gonna go to, why don't we move to the double page you got here where it says replace line 166. We'll go with that.
Okay. This would be on page 6. So this would be replacing lines 166 through 167. Once again, page 6, lines 166, 167. It would go with the following: amusement facility without the refund of any admission charge. And then then the section 6, this act shall not apply to sheriff's recreational vehicle parks as defined in section 35-15-30 Code of Alabama 1975, governmental entities as defined in section 41-1-41 Code of Alabama 1975, or summer camps. For the purpose of this act, summer camps includes facilities providing lodging, meals, and educational and recreational opportunities primarily for the benefit of children, students, and nonprofit organizations, and not members of the general public. Then section 7, this act shall become effective on the 1st, and that completes the amendment.
Any questions by members of the committee on this amendment? Not seeing none, I entertain a motion to adopt the amendment. All in favor indicate by saying aye. All opposed? So that is been adopted. Now the bill's before us is amended again. Now the third one, is this the sheet? 'Cause
That is correct.
okay, so the third one starts on page 2, line 43.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This last amendment, third amendment, friendly amendment, this would be on page 2, line 43. After rides, insert the following: courses or facilities that include whitewater rafting, paddling, climbing, bouldering, or biking. And then on page 3, line 80, after comma, following ground, insert the following: courses or facilities that include whitewater rafting or paddling.
All right, everybody's heard the amendment. Seeing no questions, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the amendment by Representative Jackson. All in favor indicate by saying aye. All opposed? All right, the bill is now before us amended. Is there any questions on the bill as amended? Representative Wadsworth.
I don't think that would be, I mean, germane to this bill in terms of triathlons. So this is dealing with more the rides, physical structures, triathlons. That's more of the human component and all, so that absent of any structural thing. So thank you for the question.
My understanding, all these amendments are agreed upon, friendly amendments.
That is correct.
So if there's no other questions, I entertain a motion in favor of report. Motion by Representative Jackson in favor of report. All indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Ayes have it. Bill has favor report.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you.
As amended, yes. That brings us
Can you see
to
me?
Representative Housley. House Bill 356.
Good morning. I hope you are all doing well. Thank you, Chairman Treadaway, for having me, as well as you guys. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you guys. So House Bill 356 addresses the subject of law enforcement training, and it explicitly deals with sensory inclusion training for individuals with sensory disorders or invisible disabilities. So in very simple terms, an invisible disability is a physical, mental, or neurological condition such as autism spectrum disorder, diabetes, PTSD, goodness gracious, epilepsy. There are several that fall under this category. But basically, they're just not visible by looking at the individual. These can limit or challenge a person's movements, their senses, their interactions with others. And unfortunately, that very fact alone can really lead to misunderstandings, false perceptions, or even incorrect judgments at times. So what House Bill 356 originally did was it required an hour of training annually to prepare officers when interacting with individuals with invisible disabilities, which is not only a benefit for the officers, but also the citizens that they serve. So today I'm bringing a sub. I don't know if this is the time you want me to do that or just stick with the original one or go ahead and go into the sub.
Hold on. We don't have it. You have
So
copy?
you should have had it. I think Natalie called Teresa. So I do have a copy, but I wrote on it, so sorry about that.
You didn't write anything about
No, I just
Representative Jackson,
underlined.
did you?
Okay.
Okay. We understand this is your first bill, correct? It is. Okay.
All right. So as I've already stated, originally it required 1 hour of training annually, and it was going to be included in their CEUs. After numerous conversations, and then of course a follow-up conversation with you, Chairman, I finally was able to connect with Chief Benefield to go over the bill, and he had some proposed changes, which I actually prefer, and it's really how I wanted the bill written in the first place, but was kind of discouraged from going that route initially. But these were his proposals, and basically what it does, and I know you don't have it in front of you, but I just use line numbers, but you'll see it underlined on my copy. But the sub changes language starting on line 30, making this applicable to each law enforcement officer certified by APOS to complete 1 hour of training on interacting with sensory needs or invisible disabilities every other year. So it changes it to every other year, and then that verbiage of this certified by APOS, or each officer certified by APOS. And then the last sentence, and this just goes right on after that, and it says this training shall be in addition to the continuing ed course requirement under section 36-21-51. Code of Alabama 1975. The only other change in the bill is on line 24, and it adds the verbiage every other year. As I said, this amendment, or not amendment, sorry, this sub came after a conversation with Benefield. I went and got just a sub drafted, sent it to him for his review, sent it back, and said that that's what we discussed. Please let me know if you have any other questions. So with that, I would like to have the sub.
Yeah, we got to get it in front of us. But I did
Yes.
want to make a couple comments. It makes the committee meetings here a lot easier, and so I do appreciate it. I know you reached out multiple times, and I thought that was important that you talked to the director of APOST, because we're affecting what they are trying to do as far as the hours that we have available to train police officers in the state of Alabama.
Yes, sir.
And by doing that, you actually came up with a better bill, and it's going to make it easier here for the committee members not to worry about what that particular state agency is thinking about the bill. So, you know, it's just something I started doing, and it makes it a lot easier and better understanding. I think you found that out too. So,
Yes, sir.
I'm Representative Bolton, and then Representative Morris.
I'd just like to take a moment to commend Representative Halsey for her work on this. We've been involved in the ground floor ever since it came up. I'd also like to recognize, if you'll stand up for me there, Ms. Ferris Terry, who brought this to my attention and the other legislators' attention some months ago. And we met and we worked on it and reached out to Representative Halsey, and she's put a tremendous amount of work in it. This is very personal to her. She has a lot of experience dealing with the situations of providing this training. And I would like to thank her for working with the law enforcement training community to make sure that this flows appropriately and they're able to put it directly into practice. That way you won't have people trying to avoid doing things like that. Thank you again.
Thank you, Representative Bolton.
Representative Morris, then Representative Jackson.
Hello.
Hey, sweetheart.
So I thank you for bringing the bill. I would have thought that this would have been something that would have already been taking place, knowing that we have people who may have different types of unseen, I don't even, whatever, disabilities. I had to try to say it the correct way. Disabilities, I would have thought that this would have already been in the books, and I'm not a law enforcer like, and when he said the CEUs with the continuing training, do you know how many? Yeah, you probably.
No, I
don't
do.
know. I mean, like,
They're required to get 12 annually right now.
so 12 hours of continuing training once a year. I don't know if that's like.
Well, that's a minimum. Most
That's a-
departments
yeah.
like Birmingham require far more. And then, of course, all your academy training, and that's what this is going to be put into the academy training. We know.
This is not. So let me give some clarification there. Right now, so I can't speak to the bill that was passed. It was a few years ago, but it changed the CIT training from 8 hours to 16 hours. There is a fair amount of training that is taking place now, starting in 2021 and beyond, that did not exist prior to, or at least not as in-depthly. This is just like anything else, kind of, I think in terms of when you think about medical things, we are always learning and evolving and figuring out better ways to do things in all kinds of different ways, right? There's a mandatory training that they have to have right now every year for CPR AED. Well, years ago, you're blowing in someone's mouth and nose and pumping their chest, and now you're just pumping their chest, right? So as we learn things and things change, you continue to be able to add to the ability to be more effective at accomplishing or educating and adequately training individuals. They do require 2 annual trainings already. Every officer has to have 2. And then the minimum, as he stated, is 12 hours. And he is right. I've talked to a lot of agencies. I've actually been working on this at a local level for a very long time. And thank you, Jesus, have been pretty successful at getting people to buy into it optionally. So really at the end of the day, there's a good, from my personal experience, there's been a good reception to having it. And this is like, and you were spot on. Like, this bill is what I actually wanted, and it's not what I filed first because I was told I couldn't get it. But this is perfect because you have 1 in 4 individuals that have an invisible disability at this point. So this isn't a matter of if they're going to interact with someone.
That's right.
They
that's
will.
Right. And I just want to say again, thank you for bringing it, and thank you for thinking of those and as you work through it, and especially before now, because we are people voice, and just saying thank you for being that voice.
Thank you, Representative
Representative
Warren.
Jackson, then Representative Bedsole, and then Representative Shaver.
Thank you, thank you. I can feel your compassion. That is wonderful. We're talking about both mental and physical disabilities, or just physical disabilities.
So this is someone who has a disability that when you look at them, you cannot identify it. Now, it would still, there are often people who have invisible disabilities that also have physical disabilities that you can see. But this addresses individuals that have sensory processing disorders or any kind of sensory disorder, and there are several. Or like, for an example, an easy one, I have a son that's on the spectrum. He looks just like you and I do. You would have no clue whatsoever that there's anything wrong with him until you begin interacting with him.
Now, you think an hour is enough every other year? When I'm law enforcement, you made it. You just made my statement. An hour every other year is not nearly enough when you're talking about sensory disabilities. But this is beginning.
Well, and I'll even speak to this. One of the things that I do like about it being every other year, because originally I wanted it just like that, but every year. And his offer was just the way I wanted it, which is this sub, but every other year. There's some good purpose in that because, again, this is something that over the last 20 years has been such an emerging area of study and people educating themselves. And it changes. I mean, the way that we interacted with just our son on the front end and the strategies that we learned over the years grew over a period of time. So what it will allow is there's a component of this bill that requires annual review of the training. And that way that can be adjusted as we continue to learn more and more and more about how to interact with those individuals, how to be able to recognize and identify better de-escalation techniques. So it gives some space for that living and learning and continuing to grow the area and make it more beneficial.
Yeah, that key word you use, de-escalation, and I think it can take a lot of training. But I love you and I appreciate you for bringing this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Representative Bedsole?
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Holsey, certainly I want to speak to two different topics, if you will, but the first from the law enforcement perspective and having the ability to really live out and see firsthand some of the efforts that have been made locally as the law enforcement agency, which I serve is in your local area. Specifically, your efforts and Chief Brad Flynn from Helena Police Department have been instrumental in spreading the word about what sensory training is. Because, I would encourage everyone, and maybe with your assistance, if anyone here on the committee could experience some of the training related to sensory training, I think it would give everyone a great opportunity to understand exactly what we're talking about. Because as you did a good job explaining, this is a little bit different than perhaps just general crisis intervention training. The sensory training piece of it is a little bit more specialized and it is a very valuable tool and a resource to use. So I certainly see how this is beneficial and the cooperation of Chief Benefield and getting this on more of a state level to see the things we've done locally, I think will be very impactful. So I appreciate your efforts on working with everyone to get this where we are today. The second thing, as the Vice Chair of the Shelby County Legislative Delegation, I just want to congratulate you on your first piece of legislation, but not only that, about bringing a meaningful bill to represent and signify exactly who we are in Shelby County, those things that are most important to us, the piece of the compassion at the heart of this. So I think that this is a good first bill for you, and I'm very appreciative of your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you,
Wow.
Representative.
Representative Shaver, you get to follow that.
Well, I guess I need to start by saying I'm friendly to the bill. Just, it's going to sound like I'm not, but I echo what Representative Bedsole said. And I do have a question in the original bill.
Yes, ma'am.
On page 2, line 30, it says that the requirements are under, it's as part of the continuing education course requirements under section 362151 of the code.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the sub, it says that this is in addition to the continuing education course requirements under that code section. And in that code section, it talks about applicability to municipal chiefs and municipal law enforcement, and then it goes on to say that the applicability to county law enforcement is if the county commission authorizes the county officers to participate. So is it your intention to then force all county officers to have this, or is it still under this code section 362151?
Sorry about that, Representative Shaver. So hopefully I understand what you're asking. When we started, obviously, going to the original filed bill, one of the things when I was discussing this with Chief Benefield is that he wanted to see the verbiage changed to specifically say each law enforcement officer certified by APOS to complete, so that it encompassed all individuals and not just your local law enforcement. So I don't know if that's answering your question necessarily. My desire would be yes, to see it to anybody who is interacting, whether it's a deputy, a sheriff, chief, an officer. To me, they're all serving in the same role, just in a different place, right? But it's critical training for every individual. So my understanding is that this language changed that and made it apply. So are you indicating that that's not accurate based on what that code's saying?
Clarity, because that section 362151 states that, however, in a case of a law enforcement officer employed by a county sheriff's department, the training shall only be required if the county commission of the county in which the officer serves shall adopt a resolution requiring such continuing education. So it needs the approval of the county.
Okay.
Is what that section states.
Okay.
So I would think that, if you were changing that, that code section would need to be amended, but
I can certainly go talk to LSA and get that figured out and make sure that we have it correct. I don't have a problem with that.
well, I just needed to know if that was your intentions.
My intention is for all of them to have it, yes.
Well, not all counties participate
I
in all
understand
of the other
I understand that.
training. It's
Yeah,
it'd be a funding issue for counties.
Understood. This training, though, is free. It is completely free. It can be done in person, but everybody I know so far has done it online. So there's no cost added at all in terms of having to pay for that training. It's provided free, and it's written into the verbiage of this bill.
And again, I'm friendly to your bill.
I know that, sweetheart. I appreciate it. I don't mind the
All right,
questions. I need to be able to handle them.
Representative Morris, Fiddler, and then Wadsworth.
I'm back. But I just want to know, will the training be for guardianship also? Like somebody who represent that person, would they have the training to be able to interact with like a guardian or something? Or is it just specifically for?
This is just specifically for law enforcement. Real
Hopefully
honest,
later
this is
you'll-
a first step in a lot of
Yeah.
places. I'd like to see this implemented. I think there's a lot of spaces that people interact with the public and provide services, but I think we'll address that in another bill.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna get run out of this committee meeting if we keep loving on this bill, but Representative Fiddler and Representative Wadsworth.
I'll make a
We
motion.
got one more bill after this.
I'll make a motion for favorable review after the questions are answered.
I'm sorry.
I said I'll make a motion for favorable review once questions are answered.
Well, I apologize. And we've got a motion. If there's no more questions, we have a motion. Hold on, we got Representative Wadsworth. Go ahead.
I just want to say that the bill makes it mandatory, regardless of whether or not a county commission wants to change that. My brother passed away a couple of years ago. He was autistic,
sorry.
and I understand what you're talking about, but I just hope you keep it as mandatory.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion by Representative Fiddler to adopt the substitute. Substitute has been explained, it's been before us. All in favor of adopting the substitute indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, so now the bill's before us as substituted, and I believe Representative Fiddler also has a motion for favorable report. There's no questions. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All right, and anybody that's opposed, the nays, so the ayes have it. Your first bill has a favorable report.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Still have more work to do.
I
So
do.
the bill has passed, the substitute has been adopted and has passed as substituted. Okay, that brings us
Thank
to
you.
our last bill, and that is, where's your sheet? Be Representative Shaver, House Bill 358.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I present from here?
Go ahead.
House Bill 358 is an ALEA bill, and it does several things in 74 pages. And just a note to the other members, it's not my practice to bring such lengthy bills, but if Reader's Digest needs people to condense into small spaces, my abilities are available. The purpose of this bill my purpose was to change boating citations from misdemeanors to violations. In presenting other boating legislation, I found out that the actual offense is a misdemeanor. And Representative Pettis brought this to my attention. And so people are unknowingly, just for, let's say, a mirror violation or a life jacket violation, it's an actual misdemeanor, and they may not be aware of that until they go to apply for a job or try to join the military, and they've checked that box that they've never had any trouble with the law. They run a background check, and lo and behold, there's a misdemeanor. It doesn't say it was for a mirror on a boat. So I asked Legislative Services to redraft the boating code to change that from misdemeanors to it's an unclassified violation. So it would create that as being unclassified, and just like a traffic citation. So, we have a classification of felonies in 3 classes, misdemeanors in 3 classes, and then under that there's an unclassified, and that's where that would place boating violations. So, in doing so, it would also allow the Secretary to create a point system and then rank the violations based on their severity, just with such as a driver's license. And so then those points, when citations are given, would then only apply to the vessel endorsement part of the license. And then secondly, when the consolidation of our law enforcement agencies took place back in 2013, not all of the references were changed. And so this changes in the boating code, the references from conservation to ALEA, and specifies that it's the Marine Patrol Division and that those officers are actually state troopers. So that's the 2 main things. It also updates some language, changes to update the code language to the current style. ALEA also asked for some changes to our state laws concerning boating to have those match the Coast Guard regulations, so that we're in compliance and have our laws to reflect the same requirements as the Coast Guard. So there's 4 instances of those, and then just 2 small things that they added. The 4 things about the federal changes to match the federal changes would be, if you're looking at the summary on page 2, the capacity plate, which is the maximum weight or number of people that a boat can safely carry in good weather. They want to change that. And also about a emergency cutoff switch. We currently, the boat length is 24 feet, and we're talking about with an open cockpit, and it would change it to any vessel under 26 feet with an open cockpit to have an emergency cutoff switch. Then the other 2 miscellaneous items that ALEA added was there may be 3 changes. Let's see, yeah. On currently, if there's an accident on the water, the people involved have 10 days to file and request a report from ALEA, and this would change that to 24 hours, and I think that's reasonable. I mean, it was kind of amazing to me that we gave people 10 days to report an accident. Also changing the time when a vessel can tow a skier or to be, it currently says 1 hour after sunset and until 1 hour before sunrise, but that's 2 hours of darkness. We're going to let people tow a skier. So this changes it to say simply sunset and sunrise. And let's see. There are 2 amendments. So, however, let me count.
All right, let's, we got the amendments here. Start with the one that, replaces line 1,662 on page 60.
Okay. This was actually a request from my circuit clerk because the time period to appeal a conviction is 14 days. So it was requested to change that from 10 days to 15 days to give the appeal time, and that makes good sense. So it's a friendly amendment.
And your second one starts on line 1,943.
Oh, yes. Currently, if a county officer writes a violation on
Up for just a second. Let me entertain a motion to adopt the First Amendment. I move by Representative Jackson to adopt the amendment. All in favor indicate by saying aye. All opposed? All right, so now the bill's before us as amended, and you have another amendment. Go ahead.
on page 70, there currently, if a county officer writes a citation for a violation on the water, that county gets half the money. So this would retain that as it currently is. It puts that language in there to retain that.
All right, any questions on the Second Amendment? Not seeing any, I entertain a motion to adopt the amendment. Motion by Pettis to adopt the amendment. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. Now the bill's before us as amended. Is there any questions by any members of the committee? I had Representative Pettis and then Representative Jackson.
I had a situation where this come up. I had one of my constituents, when he was young, he got a ticket for not having the mirror in his boat. Well, he goes and applies for a job, and he marks on his application and never been arrested. Well, they run a criminal history on him, and it showed he had a misdemeanor arrest and conviction for not having. He did not get his job because they said he lied on his application. Most people don't understand that if you get a ticket on the boating, it's different than you get a ticket out on the road. This would make them the same. It's a violation. It's not a misdemeanor arrest. Like I said, I think it's a very good bill, and hopefully we adopt it.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Fiddler and then Morris.
There's a lot in this bill. I want to commend the lady as well, but I have a question as it relates to what Representative Pettis just said. Now, how many violations can I get before you take my license? Now, if I'm on the streets, I keep getting tickets. No tail light, no signal light, one headlight. I get written up for how many times will I be allowed to have a violation, or is it a continuation, nonstop, before it becomes something greater than just a violation? It becomes a misdemeanor, or I lose my privilege of boating license.
That's up to the secretary to adopt the schedule for how many points it counts and all of that, but it also has a time frame. Like they roll off just like with, a traffic citation, a traffic ticket. They stay on your points record for 2 years, then they roll off.
But there's no limit. Okay, I got you. Thank you.
Representative Fiddler, then Representative Morris.
Okay. First thing, I didn't realize about the 24-hour change when I read through the bill, because I started thinking about that. And we have, I live on a coastal area, so I'm around boats a lot. And if there is an accident, most of the time, those boaters do not report the accident. They're lone accidents or whatever, and they just don't get reported. So 10 days, I'm not sure if it makes sense or not. They don't get reported anyway. So maybe in a serious accident, they might report within 24 hours. I mean, I'm just telling you, that's the way they operate. They may have, run into a dock or whatever, and nobody really knows because it's just a lone accident. But I've had an opportunity to really look at this, and I don't have anything else that I need to say, regarding the bill. But I will make a comment that in our area that we've had some serious issues with not having navigational aids for our boaters, which tourists and our residents need those navigational aids coming off of federal waterways that the Coast Guard maintains and coming into our inland waters, whether it's to go to Jesse's Restaurant in Magnolia Springs or coming up Fish River and go into some of the restaurants we have up Fish River. Going in and out, we have an issue with navigational aids, and through my research, I have found that in 2015, we changed over the Marine Patrol Division underneath the Department of Natural Resource Conservation Services to the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency, and it appears that in this change that there was some sort of some of those duties, all those duties were supposed to be moved over to ALEA, and the navigational aids seem like they have slipped through the cracks. And I did come with an amendment that I decided not to do today underneath the duties, just the general duties of making sure those navigational aids are in there. But I'm going to continue to do that research and just to inform the body that is something that is a concern of our constituents, safely navigating their way back in the dark when there's pilings out there that are not marked. That is a real safety concern for our constituents, and I'm going to continue to work on that. I'm not going to bring it up in the middle of this bill, so I appreciate Representative Shaver for the work she's done on this, and I'll close with that. Thank you.
Representative Morris?
I almost said with a gentle lady, yeah. So I had a few questions, but I don't even. So with the violations, are we just specifically talking about the mirrors and the tail lights? Nothing serious gonna happen, and it's still gonna fall under violations?
Reckless operation and BUI still remain criminal.
Okay.
All right, see no more questions. I entertain a motion for favorable report. A motion for favorable report by Representative Pettis. All in favor indicate by saying aye as the bill is before us as amended.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the bill has a favorable report as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn by Representative Jackson. All in favor?